The Fog of War, Understanding the Escalating Iran-Israel Conflict. Welcome back to another episode of Roh's Corner. I'm your host, Roh, and today we're diving deep into one of the most volatile geopolitical situations of our time, the escalating conflict between Iran and Israel. In this solo narration, we'll explore how this crisis unfolded, what's really happening on the ground, why so many missile strikes may be hitting decoys, and whether regime change in Iran is even possible. We'll also examine the broader implications for the Middle East, including potential regional fallout, the role of global powers like Russia and China, and whether diplomacy can still save the day. So, grab your coffee, settle in, and let's unpack it all. The decoy dilemma: why Israel isn't hitting real targets. Let's start with a hard truth. Not every missile launcher Israel claims to have destroyed was real. Back during the Gulf War, the Iraqis mastered the art of deception. They wouldn't deploy a Scud launcher until they were certain the skies were clear of enemy aircraft. US F-15E jets would arrive within 5 to 7 minutes of a potential launch site, but if an enemy plane approached too soon, the Iraqis simply wouldn't risk launching a missile. And here's the kicker: they'd fire the missile, then move the launcher to a hidden location, often covered with tarps to reduce infrared signatures. Despite flying overhead, US jets couldn't locate or destroy them. We didn't destroy a single operational Scud launcher during that entire war. Fast forward to today, and the Iranians have studied those tactics closely. They've prepared for scenarios just like this one. So when Israel says they've destroyed Iranian missile launchers, take it with a grain of salt. Most of what Israel has struck are sophisticated decoys, fake launchers designed to look real. Just like in the Black Hawk Down incident, where Warrant Officer Durant strafed what he thought was a real Scud launcher, only to later discover it was a dummy. If there's no massive secondary explosion, no solid rocket fuel igniting in midair, chances are it wasn't a real target at all. This isn't just about misinformation. It's about strategy. If an Israeli pilot sees a missile launcher sitting out in the open, it's almost certainly a trap. A real launcher would never be that exposed. Israel's shifting strategy from nuclear sites to regime change? Initially, Israel's mission seemed clear: destroy Iran's nuclear facilities. But over time, their objectives have expanded. First, they targeted nuclear sites. Then, they moved on to ballistic missile production facilities. Now, whispers of regime change are growing louder. Israel has begun striking IRGC security offices, prisons, and even symbolic targets like a clock in Tel Aviv. But is this escalation working? Or is Israel reacting to failures rather than being emboldened by success? Let's break it down. What made Iran's nuclear program dangerous was its 60% enriched uranium combined with advanced centrifuge cascades, specifically IR-6 and IR-8 models, capable of rapidly producing weapons-grade material. Israel hasn't touched this infrastructure. In fact, by attacking Iran, they may have strengthened internal support for the nuclear program. Strategically, Israel has made a major error. On the missile front, Israel has targeted known production sites like Park Chin. But these are visible, easily identifiable facilities. The real danger lies underground, in the knowledge and blueprints buried deep inside mountains. Once you know how to build a hypersonic missile, rebuilding becomes easy. Israel has failed to stop Iran's missile development. Advanced missiles continue to strike Israeli cities. So now, Israel's final option appears to be regime change, the only way they believe they can permanently halt both Iran's nuclear ambitions and missile programs. Regime change, a dangerous gamble. To achieve regime change, Israel is targeting key symbols of Iranian power, IRGC headquarters, police stations, and other security installations. The idea is to show the Iranian people that their government isn't invincible, hoping to spark unrest and ultimately an uprising. Sound familiar? It should. This mirrors Operation Desert Fox in 1998, when the US bombed Iraqi military and intelligence sites in hopes of triggering a coup against Saddam Hussein. It didn't work. History shows that bombing a country doesn't make its people turn against their leaders. Instead, it tends to rally them around the flag. Today, the Iranian people appear more united behind the regime than ever before. Even the Israelis and Americans acknowledge this. So while Israel may hope regime change is imminent, the reality is far more complex. And the longer this war drags on, the more damage Israel suffers, economically, socially, and geopolitically. The risk of mass exodus, Israel's existential threat. One of the biggest dangers for Israel isn't just physical destruction, it's demographic collapse. How many Israelis will remain in the country if they live under constant threat of missile attacks? Israel must be careful not to trigger a mass exodus, an existential tipping point. That's why they've closed borders. Panic spreads quickly, and once it starts, it's hard to contain. Israel wants stability. But how can they rebuild when every day brings new damage to expensive infrastructure? The Ashdod power plant was recently hit, another blow to Israel's economy and resilience. This war is unsustainable. And Israel knows it. Regional fallout, a war beyond borders. This isn't just an Iran-Israel conflict anymore. It's become a regional war. The UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain have closed their airspace. Lebanon, still recovering from its war with Hezbollah, is trying to avoid further entanglement. Gaza remains in ruins. The region is on edge, and the risk of escalation into a broader, long-term conflict involving other nations is real. Everyone wants this to end, except perhaps China and Russia. Not necessarily. China thrives on stability and global trade. A chaotic Middle East hurts their long-term goals, including peaceful integration of Taiwan. Russia benefits most from stability, especially in Ukraine. Both nations want this war to end so they can focus on their own priorities. Hezbollah, the wild card. Surprisingly, Hezbollah has refrained from joining the war, at least for now. Could this lead to normalization between Lebanon and Israel? Possibly. If the Iran-Israel conflict ends, Hezbollah may lose justification for armed resistance and revert to a political party. That could bring Lebanon closer to international norms and UN resolutions calling for Hezbollah's disarmament. Lebanon's future depends on compromise. Surrounded by Israel, Syria, and Turkey, it can't afford instability. Peaceful coexistence is the only path forward. The role of global powers, diplomacy over war. The US wants to declare a win without boots on the ground. Israel wants the war to end. Iran wants to deter future Israeli aggression. Russia benefits from US distraction. China seeks economic dominance through global supply chains and avoids chaos. Europe wants peace. So who might push this toward wider war? Misunderstanding Iran's resolve. Iran is not afraid of regime change, that's a Western perception. In 2006, Dick Cheney and George W. Bush planned an invasion of Iran. The Iranians responded by breaking the country into 57 self-sustaining military districts, each stocked for 2 years of combat. Iran can endure. They're not panicking. Israel, on the other hand, is suffering damage it did not prepare for. If the US gets dragged into this conflict under false assumptions, that Iran is weak or fearful, it could commit to an air campaign that fails. Then what? Mobilizing hundreds of thousands of troops for a prolonged war in contested airspace is not feasible today. And if conventional options fail, the temptation to use tactical nuclear weapons could arise, as seen in reports of Trump considering a nuclear strike on Fordow during earlier tensions. This conflict could spiral out of control, potentially leading to nuclear war, global economic collapse, and unimaginable consequences. Public opinion in Iran, not as fragile as you think. Many polls suggest up to 80% of Iranians oppose the current regime. But historical examples show that regime change often leads to chaos. Libya, Iraq, Syria. Today, despite ongoing bombing, we see no major unraveling. The regime is more secure now than it was during the protests. Bombing a country tends to unite its people, not divide them. The real risk comes not during the war, but after, when the scale of destruction becomes clear and the regime struggles to rebuild. Sanctions in peacetime could cripple Iran's recovery and lead to renewed unrest. Netanyahu's political comeback? In Israel, Netanyahu's popularity has risen since the war began. After October 7th, his leadership was questioned. Now, he's portrayed as a wartime leader, but perceptions can shift. If the public realizes this war was unnecessary, or if American negotiations yield a deal allowing Iran to enrich uranium up to 3.75%, something reportedly on the table, Netanyahu could face backlash. Gaza, the humanitarian nightmare. And what about Gaza? The humanitarian disaster is undeniable. Israel may claim victory by weakening Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, and Assad. But Gaza lies in ruins. The war must end. Could this be the moment for a grand bargain? A Russian-Chinese-Pakistani draft resolution for an unconditional ceasefire may soon reach the UN Security Council. If the US supports it, and Trump has given himself political cover, then the path to peace opens. Israel, Iran, and the region can begin to heal. A path forward, diplomacy, not war. Trump's recent tweet signaled restraint. We're done. He doesn't want oil prices rising. The Iranian sent 6 missiles in response to 6 bombers, measured retaliation. No Hormuz closure. No oil fields attacked. The signal is clear, de-escalation is possible. Russia, too, is playing a key role. Foreign Minister Lavrov visited Moscow before the strike. That coordination suggests behind-the-scenes diplomacy. Putin, pragmatic and rational, wants calm. He's ready to mediate. China has publicly urged Iran not to escalate. The pieces are falling into place. A Russian-Chinese-Pakistani draft resolution for an unconditional ceasefire may soon reach the UN Security Council. If the US supports it, and Trump has given himself political cover, then the path to peace opens. Israel, Iran, and the region can begin to heal. Conclusion: hope amidst chaos. This conversation started amid tragedy, with missiles flying and uncertainty everywhere. But by walking through the facts, analyzing motives, and weighing outcomes, we arrived at a hopeful conclusion. There is a way forward. Diplomacy, not war, offers the best path. Let's hope leaders choose wisely. In that wise, it is worth mentioning that at the point of publishing this podcast, social media was abuzz with reports of ceasefire. We hope that it holds. Thank you for tuning in to Roh'sCorner. If you found this analysis insightful, please share it with others, leave a review, and subscribe for more in-depth coverage of global affairs. Until next time, stay informed, stay safe, and remember, in the fog of war, clarity is our greatest weapon.